We're talking about William Friedkin's The Exorcist today on Gene and Roger Talk Movies. And one of the reasons is, unfortunately, Mr. Friedkin has passed away. And
recently passed away a couple weeks ago, yeah.
And he was definitely one of the directors of the new Hollywood movement that started in the 60s and kind of ended, around, 82, 83, when the studios kind of took control again and ruined movies for us forever. But definitely part of that exciting time in Hollywood when a lot of interesting films came out and were completely controlled by the director. But let's get right into it. Gene, initial thoughts on The Exorcist.
The Exorcist. Yeah, good job, William Friedkin. It's a good movie. However, as somebody who's consumed a lot of horror movies, and we live, what is this year that we're in right now? 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
This movie came out in 1973, a big whopping 50 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I've read a lot of reviews about this movie, and a lot of movies say this movie stands the test of time. And I think Roger, right here,
absolutely,
is going to tell us how much he loves this movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this movie is a product of his time. And did some research, and what were the favorite TV shows on in 1973?
Ooh, was Hawaii Five-O one of them?
I don't know,
but
I was going to say All in the Family. The Waltons. On network TV, The Waltons, The $6 Million Man, Barnaby Jones. These were popular shows in 1973.
Mm-hmm.
So when The Exorcist came out, it was groundbreaking. Just the graphic horror, just the head spinning, the vomit flying through the air, the possessed creature, Linda Blair, ends up killing like 3 people. So I think it's just at that time the movie took horror to a new level. And I think people were used to the Waltons, Barnaby Jones, and they went to see this movie and they were just blown away. But however, march forward 50 years, we've gone through the Saw franchises and Hostel, yeah, come on.
I sit on your grave.
Oh, I don't know if we'll ever review that one. But no. While I was watching this movie, it just seemed, I just got to say, it just seemed really campy. Like part of at the very beginning of the movie, where it opens in northern Iraq and they're digging these archaeological sites, it just reminded me a lot of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I thought I was watching Raiders of the Lost Ark again. And there are parts where there's some like sounds in the house and, the scampering, and the mom thinks this, I have rats in the attic. And it just made me think of the Amityville Horror. And then there's a priest involved, 2 priests involved, actually. One's a priest who's about to lose his faith, and is played by this actor, Jason Miller, who happens to be the head coach in the movie Rudy. So this movie's going on, I'm thinking about Rudy. And then finally, it's just like the 2 priests, and there's one scene where they're throwing holy water on Linda Blair, the possessed Linda Blair. And she says, it burns. Mm-hmm. And I was like, come on, that's just straight out of, LOTR, the 2 Towers, where Sam and Frodo put the little rope on Gollum. And he says, it burns us. It burns. I just couldn't. I'm sorry. I just couldn't take it seriously. It was great for its time. It was awesome.
Well,
but
Gene,
50 years later, I'm sorry. It just doesn't work. It doesn't.
I appreciate the fact that you've seen so many horror films now that The Exorcist does nothing for you. But I think a lot of what you're saying about how other films maybe have copied certain camera placements and things like that, this again is a testament to
them.
William Friedkin, his genius as a director.
Right.
He had
imitations, the greatest form of flattery.
Right.
Sure.
And of course, The Exorcist, as we all know, spawned hundreds of little girl possessed movies, right? Especially in Italy, Beyond the Door and those ones. But
I think isn't there like a Exorcist movie out right now?
But there's a new one coming out.
Yeah. Right. Where it's not just one girl; there's 2 little girls.
But I think William Friedkin, this movie, and it still has the power to shock you. One of the reasons, of course, is it's all practical effects. So when Linda
Right.
Blair's head is spinning around,
That's really
oh,
happening.
that was really happening right there. There's no CGI
No
going on
CGI
here.
at all in this movie.
Right. I mean, but
I
then
think when she pees on the rug, I wonder if she really.
who knows, you know? I mean, they had that kind of a more adult person, Mercedes McCambridge, doing some of the scenes, and so maybe that was her doing that. But that's another example of kind of the shock. Have we ever seen a film where a 12-year-old girl urinates on the floor? I can't recall one, right? A
It's
12-year-old
groundbreaking.
girl saying extremely explicit things
Right.
to her mother and doing explicitly terrible things to herself with
Right.
a crucifix and things. And that was what kind of set this movie, like Eugene, like you said earlier, where, yeah, you hadn't seen this before. This took horror in a whole new direction.
Oh yeah, you're used to watching the Waltons, and then you turn this thing on.
But I also think the brilliance of William Friedkin here and his ability to tell a story, the thing I noticed when I watched it again just the other day was it takes its time to tell its story, which is
Right.
this, there's like this 1970s era when directors were in control. The movies were different than what you see now, where everything is rapid fire and maybe you've got a scene that's only 4 seconds long or whatever. That's not 70s movies. 70s movies are, we are going to play this scene out from beginning to end, and it may be a 3-minute scene of them talking about what's wrong with your daughter. We're 2 doctors, and we're explaining it, and you know, here's the whole operation that we're going to do a CAT scan of her brain and all this, and we're seeing it all.
We do get a pretty good view of medical technology in the 70s. We'll do have to say this before MRI machines.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're looking at. They took a lot of X-rays of her.
They did. Well, and the other thing I love about 70s movies, of course, is what are all the doctors doing? What are all the priests doing? They're all lighting up cigarettes left and right.
Everyone is smoking, and it's just is like, what is in the world? That's a horror movie right there.
Yeah,
that everyone
it's
is smoking.
Oh, I just love it because that doctor comes out. She's waiting for him. The
Oh, yeah,
doctor
yeah.
comes out and he immediately lights up his cigarette.
The doctor comes out, yeah, and
Well, here's what's wrong with your daughter. Here's what we
and
think's
lights
wrong.
up the cigarette right in front of her. Yeah, it's just, but some things, I don't know, I just kind of wasn't buying. Again, going back to my analogy to the Amityville Horror, I mean, there's a scene, which I think we might review next week, but in Amityville Horror, there's this, like a part where there's like a little 7-8-year-old girl where she sees like a vision of like a pig visiting her, and she draws the pig on a piece of paper. And actually, you know, Amityville Horror is based on a true story, and you can actually look at the website and see these drawings. You know, and I could buy that for like an 8-year-old, but here in this movie, you know, Linda Blair is like 12.
Mhm.
And so I really had a kind of a hard time believing that a 12-year-old would have like a play person, you know, that she plays the Ouija board with. You know, I kind of wasn't buying it. I kind of wish that the casting seemed off. I think it would have been more logical if this person had been younger.
Well, I don't know. I'm giving the movie a pass on this
You pass
one
on that one?
because looking at the Linda Blair character, Reagan is her name.
yeah.
She is what? She is a sheltered child. Her
Sheltered.
mother is a movie star, actress,
Famous movie
whatever.
star, is very loving, very caring.
But this kid has been taken care of by nannies and has been in this town and that town and the next town. They're renting this house they're in this movie. They don't even
Right.
live there.
Right.
And so is she kind of a homeschooled person more than likely? Could I see her falling under the spell of, I've got an imaginary friend because I can't make any other friends because I'm never anywhere too long, or I'm being kind of sheltered because I'm the daughter of this famous person and, we don't want you to get kidnapped.
Yeah.
But I also go down the
We're
road.
kind of extrapolating there, right?
But
All
I
this
also-
is
well-
unseen.
But I also go down the road of when you're dealing with demonic possession, well, the demon gets in a little bit and then it starts corrupting your ability to recognize or deal with things that are happening. And so was that whole thing of, because her little imaginary friend is Captain Howdy, which is great.
Right.
You know, was that just, keep believing in Captain Howdy. I'm going to keep possessing you more and more and more because
Right.
she gets full on demon possessed and head spinning and all this craziness. But initially it's it's a slow process.
Right. Yeah, I like the part where the priest tapes Reagan, and then the priest like goes to a linguist, I think, because they're by Georgetown University, and the guy said, "No, it's not Latin. This is English, but backwards."
Right, right.
And so he plays the tape backwards, and there are like multiple people in there.
Well, and that was the thing,
pretty cool.
too, because the priest, Father Karras, it takes him a good long time to decide that, yeah, maybe she is possessed. And even when he's doing this with that language stuff, it's like, well, wouldn't this be a sign of possession? How would a 12-year-old girl be able to just spout stuff backwards like that you could only hear it if you were on the tape? It's like, well, no, it's not. It's English, so it's not a foreign language that she wouldn't know, and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But again, this is, William Friedkin, again, I think just taking his time developing the story. And when the major shocks come towards the last half of the film, yeah, it's for real. It's crazy stuff is happening, and it's kind of priming you for what's to come. And it's this slow kind of build, which is very pleasant from today's films, where everything has to get. I mean, I'm kind of intrigued to see this new version of The Exorcist, or this sequel, prequel,
I'm not
whatever
intrigued
it is,
at all, because I'm not going to see it.
Because I'm sure it's just going to be, we're going to get right to the point. It's going to be a lot of flash cuts. Nothing's going to really be explained except in some throwaway
lots of jump scares,
and stuff like that. Yeah, that's not what this movie is.
Although this movie had some jump scares too.
One.
You think? I think when the mom is in the attic, and all of a sudden the caretaker surprises her, and then her little candle goes woof, like a flamethrower.
That's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's just a little jump scare. Yeah,
And I just, of course, it's got the iconic Exorcist stairs, which everyone knows about. Which is
the Exorcist stairs, which I guess is they're real stairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your buddy it's in Georgetown. Where is it?
Yeah, he was a military guy, and Air Force guy, and so he was going all around that side of the world, and he stumbled across. He purposely took a pilgrimage to the Exorcist stairs to take a photo of laying at the bottom of them, like he'd been killed.
But right, they're here in the United States, right?
Yeah, and the early footage in Iraq is great, because Max von Sydow is in this film as the main exorcist, Father Merrin. And the beginning of the film, the first, 15 minutes maybe, it's set in Iraq, and they're really in Iraq filming, and you are following Father Merrin around, and then he disappears for basically the next hour and 30 minutes of this film.
Yeah, and then he reappears later.
And so they've got this really nice prologue set up, and then you're following Father Karras for a lot of the film after that, as he's trying to come to grips with his own faith. He's lost his mother. He blames himself. It's opening the door for the demon to tempt him and give him a lot of additional grief. And it's just a well-constructed story. And William Peter Blatty, of course, is the author. If you've read the novel, it's perfect, a perfect filming of that novel, and of course he wrote the screenplay for it as well.
It seemed like it wrapped up a little too quickly at the end, because I was watching it really late on my iPad, and I noticed, oh man, this movie's kind of long. And then I looked at, you see how much time you have left, and there were 11 minutes left. But Reagan was still fully possessed. She had beaten back all of their attempts to extricate the demon. Mm-hmm. But here we got 11 minutes left in the movie, so you just got to think, well, how's he going to just wrap this all up? So it seemed a little, do I say, contrived, or a little too easy of an ending, that all of a sudden, the priest, Father Karras, he would just say, take me, and then the demon goes in him, and he jumps out the window down the famous stairs.
Well, but I
bodily
think
destroyed, and then it kills the demon, because then he himself dies.
Right, but I think that was kind of the point of the film. There was Father Karras coming to the realization that faith will set him free, and he regained his faith right there at the end, and that's when he went for that take me, and then I'm going to bail myself, because it shows a close-up of him clearly possessed. His face is changed,
he was
and everything.
Possessed, right.
And then quickly it goes back to his regular face, which gives him the time to jump out. And that was him completely being restored in his faith, knowing what he had to do to save this little girl. And so he made the ultimate sacrifice, but because of his faith. And then at the end, he's laying down there, and the other father comes up and is giving him
Gives
the
him
last
the last
rites.
rights, right?
And this is a great thing to talk about, too, about the power that directors had in the 70s. And I do not remember the actor's name, but he wasn't a Mr. Super Professional actor by any means. But he's standing over the soon-to-be dead Father Karras.
Yeah, this super huge head wound, lots of blood all over. Yeah,
he's taking a huge dive. And so he's holding his hand, and Father Karras' hand, he's like, are you ready for your last confession? And he squeezes his hand and things like that. But during that scene, that actor who was giving the last rites was not displaying the kind of emotion that William Friedkin wanted. And so what did this director do? Cut the film, went up to him, slapped him as hard as he could in the face, told him to roll the film so they could get a more emotional reaction from this guy. So what you're seeing in there of him kind of breaking down a little bit is because, the director of this movie just came up and slapped me. And I was thinking about that because remember Scott Eggleston, the director of Bad Bones, who we've had on a couple times, he was talking about how actors need to trust their director.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, this guy must have really trusted this director or to allow that to happen and not turn into some big brawl all of a sudden, or I trusted this guy until he slapped me. I mean, at what point do you just like go off the rails as a director, right?
Well, that as an actor, I think if a director slaps you and then they turn the camera back on, you got to go back to your character. You don't have any big emotional, off-camera breakdown, a scene.
But I mean, could you imagine Francis Ford Coppola slapping Marlon Brando in The Godfather?
Yeah. Well, not Brando. Maybe he slapped somebody else.
Right. But I just thought that was it. And they actually have film footage of that occurring. So if on the
interesting,
the special edition DVD, you can see the cut scene where that occurs, and then they roll the camera.
They roll it again.
Yeah. And that's the other thing about The Exorcist. It was nominated for 10 Academy Awards. Of course, welcome to horror films. It didn't win any of the important ones.
Like which one that year?
Well, and that's what we need to talk about, because 1973, it was up against The Sting, which The Sting won. And I'm so sick and tired.
Sigh.
Right. I'm so sick and tired of obvious Best Pictures being passed over. Has anyone thought about The Sting until I just mentioned it? Nobody talks about that movie anymore.
We can get into a whole talk about the Last Emperor. The movie Crash. I mean, we can get into.
Well, we can talk about Crash.
No, I hate Crash. No, we're not going to get into that.
But I think with
That's
The Exorcist, what did The Exorcist spawn? Well, it spawned a number of sequels, and most of which aren't very good. Yeah. It also spawned a whole genre of possession movies, but it also spawned a special director's cut. It's also been back at theaters numerous times since its original release. Most recently, I think it was 2014 or maybe 2020. It lives today like it is brand new, and The Sting is on the dustbin of history.
Yeah, nobody watches The
Sting.
Right,
and it's just disgusting that the Academy continually misses on what the true Best Picture is. Why did Annie Hall beat Star Wars?
Yeah, let's not even get into Color Purple or yeah.
But anyway, back to this. William Friedkin, of course, he was coming off of The French Connection, where it did win the Academy Award for Best Picture, and he won for Best Director, and it won for Best Actor, and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, Gene Hackman there.
And then he goes directly into The Exorcist, which again, huge hit, was the highest-grossing film for the longest, well, until Jaws came around, and then kind of had a little fall off. I mean, you're high on the pedestal there. The only place to go really is down. He banked a lot of his energy into a film called Sorcerer, which was a colossal failure. Although if you've seen Sorcerer, it's a lot better than the box office would tell you.
Yeah, there are a lot of really good movies out there that don't have a really good box office.
And then he did Cruising, which was an incredibly controversial film with Al Pacino. Have you seen that movie,
No,
Cruising?
I've not seen it.
Okay, extremely controversial. He tried his hand at comedy with Deal of the Century, which was a Chevy Chase movie, which if William Friedkin is a great director, he's not a great director of comedy, and he learned that because he never tried it again.
Okay.
But his later films, another 1985 he did to Live and Die in L.A. Have you seen that one?
I've heard of it, but I don't know.
That one's really good. It's kind of a good companion piece maybe to The French Connection because there's a really great car chase in this one, and something really shocking happens about 45 minutes into this movie, which no one would catch or even expect. And he did a couple more horror movies. Bug with Ashley Judd. Have you seen that one? Where they're in the hotel room, it's all bugged.
I think that I'm confusing that with like Slither.
No, that's not like that. And then also did The Guardian, that crazy druid movie.
I don't know this. Roger, I can't watch all the horror movies like you. I just don't have the time. I had 2 kids. I mean, I can't do it.
But, by the time The Guardian came around, we're talking the 90s. And a lot of the power of the directors was gone. The 70s, like probably around 1967 to maybe 1982, directors were in charge and they could make movies like The French Connection and The Exorcist with no studio interference. The fact that The Exorcist got away with an R rating is amazing because there is some definite NC-17 stuff going on in
there
here.
Is. Yeah.
But Gene, anything else to talk about with The Exorcist? I mean, you've either seen the thing and know what we're talking about, or, my God, you need to go see it if you've never seen it.
Yeah, The Exorcist. Again, I'll stand by my point is I think it exists well within its time. It's just 50 years. It's a long time. And, I mean, is it better than a lot of stuff that's out now? I don't think so. Roger disagrees.
Oh,
but,
totally, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, see if you want, on Apple TV, $4 rental. But... watching this movie, like I said, it made me think about a lot of other movies, again, that maybe were inspired by that movie originally. But, a lot of it is just, it's 50 years later again, and it's just, I don't know, hard to take it seriously.
I don't know. It's hard to call yourself a horror film fan if you have not seen The Exorcist. You can not like it if you want. You're wrong by not liking it. But
you're okay if you don't like it.
Well, of course you are.
And you're okay if you don't like The Shining either.
Well, The Shining is okay to hate that one. But
we all hate that movie.
Yeah, oh my God, don't even get me started on that.
Let's just review that movie.
Can I sit through that dang thing again? But The Exorcist, I think it's just a beautiful film. I mean, I know we're dealing with really graphic, horrifying things, but it's a beautiful film. It's from an era where you don't see films constructed this way anymore, where it's given time to breathe. It's given time to introduce the characters. I know all of these characters, upside down and backwards, basically, just from what we saw on the film. Movies today, it's rapid fire this, rapid fire that. We're not giving any real character development. Motivations don't matter anymore. It's just whatever moves this plot towards its conclusion.
Well, not generalize too much. There are lots of stuff.
And I do think
good horrors out there.
I do think that The Exorcist is superior to most horror films that are coming out now. We did the review of Talk to Me. That's another good horror film.
That's good horror.
Right? It gave time for stuff to build and things like that. But Megan, is it as good as Megan?
Oh, Megan's junk. It's junk.
Megan's great, by the way.
No, Megan is not great. Please don't watch Megan.
But I think
it's a total waste.
William Friedkin is in that group of directors where they had control, they had stories to tell, visions to put on celluloid. They did that without studio interference, and we are all better for it. Francis Ford Coppola with Apocalypse Now, and Steven Spielberg with Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and movies like that. Even like Raiders of the Lost Ark was still in that realm of directors got control. George Lucas with Star Wars.
Yeah,
you had movies that just are hard to find today. Because it's all studios saying, no, we need to add this, or we need to cut this out, or it has to end this way or that way. The last thing I'll say about The Exorcist, of course, it did receive a director's cut, created and approved by William Friedkin himself. He added a bunch of scenes in. The movie actually ends on a much more positive note. There's a scene at the end of the scene, the theatrical version just basically ends with the priest having given Father Karras his last rites, and then he's kind of saying goodbye to the family, and then he walks off down this kind of walkway thing. In the extended edition, he meets up with a person we haven't talked about. There's a police officer played by Lee J. Cobb who's investigating all of these.
Yeah, private
craziness.
detective, yeah.
And they actually have a scene right at the end of the movie where it appears they're going to develop this friendship over their love of film. And so it kind of ends more positively. But the reason most people wanted to see the extended cut was the infamous spider walk sequence that Linda Blair does down the stairwell, which is something to see if you haven't seen that. I'm kind of glad it was not in the theatrical version. It wasn't in the theatrical version because they couldn't get the effect right. Obviously, with the passage of time, you can do things like we're going to CGI wipe some of these wires and things like that. So it looks pretty cool, but I'm okay it wasn't in the original.
Yeah, but you got to move the plot along, even for 70s movies that like Roger says you want to extend character development. You still got to move the plot along, so some scenes got to get cut. So yeah, stick with this. The theatrical version's better.
Yeah, and then Gene, we're really going to go down the road of Amityville Horror next week.
I like the Amityville Horror.
So
I like that movie.
So we'll stay within the realm of 70s horror films. We've done a couple of them, of course. Chainsaw Massacre, I think, was the first 70s horror movie we did, and we'll be doing Amityville Horror next week and see what we think about that one.
All right.
All right, we'll catch you later. Bye.
Bye.